Another day and another early morning, although this morning was different from all others that I've had so far on this Caribbean island. Cuban coffee, it hits differently, so after a shot of espresso, I was up and on the road ready for the day ahead. Everyone has heard of Cuba's world-famous cigars. I took a day to travel to a one-of-a-kind valley where farmers harvest endless fields of green tobacco that will eventually become those world-renowned cigars. The Valle de Viñales. Viñales is located 2.5 hours southwest of La Habana and has a lush landscape with fertile red soil and steep limestone cliffs called mogotes. There's only 2 places in the world that feature these sharp cliff mountains, here in Cuba and in Southeast Asia. People have been growing tobacco in that valley for over 200 years, and I was on my way there. I was road tripping with 3 fellow Americans and our 2 local guides. The ride down there was like catching up with old friends. We all got lost in conversation, sharing our own stories and experiences as we made our way down through the Cuban countryside. The Sierra de los Sarganos mountain range that sat in the distance reminded me of the mountains that I grew up in back in North Carolina. They provided as an additional guide showing us the way to the valley. All we had to do was follow them. If I wasn't talking or listening, I had my head out the window like a dog. No shame on my part. I'm a windows down kind of guy anyway. For a 2.5-hour drive, it was going by fast. Road tripping with strangers with stories to tell, while driving through the countryside of a beautiful place you've never been to will do that, I suppose. Hours turned into minutes as we got closer to the valley. It wouldn't be long before we got to the top of the mountains and began heading down to the farm. After we drove up the mountain with winding roads, we leveled off on a plateau that put us just minutes outside of our first stop. It was of an overlook of the valley below. The view, in fact, is what made me want to make a day trip down here while staying in La Habana in the first place. Once I saw a picture, I did a bit more research and found out about the historical and geographical significance of the area and made it a point to make it here. It's possible my mind was playing tricks on me, but I swear I could smell the tobacco in the air as I got out of the car and took in the Valle de Viñales. I could have stayed there for hours looking out at all the palm trees and mogotes, but we had places to go and people to see, so we hopped back in the car and headed to our second stop, a local tobacco farm. Junior here was leading the charge, our Gandalf of the journey if you will, and is one cool dude. On the way to the farm, we drove through a small village that sits in the heart of Viñales, which is lined with colorful houses that only add to the magical aesthetic of the valley. Once we got outside the farm, we'd be taking the rest of the trip there on horseback. It had been about 20 years since I was on a horse, so I was anxious to get there and ascend a trusty steed once more. I'm going to go ahead and apologize for the Blair Witch camera shaking that happens while I'm upon mi caballo, but this docu-series was on a slim budget, so I made do. In all honesty, it's what I saw too, so score 1 for true to life. At any rate, we followed a red dirt road to the center of the farm. I took to my horse like riding a bike, whose name was Bandito by the way. Solid name. We arrived at the tobacco farm and got a first-hand view of the harvesting process, from growing the plant to the final product, a Cuban cigar. All this talk of tobacco and cigars was really making me want one, but I had to be patient. We took a walk inside of a tobacco drying barn that used the sun to slowly dry the leaves, one of the final processes of making a cigar. Speaking of making a cigar, we headed back to a small hut where we could get a first-hand explanation of the rolling process, but first, we had to drink some rum and have a few cocktails.
We're just taking all the bacteria. Yeah, it's kind of amazing.
How many ounces is it?
We don't use it. Only in the factories they use the stem inside of the cigars here. Then we just take pieces of leaves with all the stem, and then just take here, use the filler here. It'll be basically like sushi but with all the fish. Tastes different.
Yeah.
Yes. So, better not to eat. Then we just roll.
Cigar in hand, I jumped back on Bendito, and we rode into the vast valley surrounded by tobacco fields and mogotes. Junior was leading the way to the other side of the farm, heading to our next stop.
Hola.
Hola.
I channeled my inner Cubano and enjoyed the ride atop Bendito, taking in everything the valley had to offer. Birds were chirping from the trees above, providing the soundtrack for our adventure. I found that while visiting Cuba, you will constantly be surrounded by color. In this case, it was a deep, lush green landscape that was full of palm trees and exotic plants. As the sun beat down on us in the humid valley, condors hovered over in the sky above, making our journey a little more cinematic, almost in a surreal fashion, and I was loving every minute of it. While riding, Junior informed us about the valley's diverse agricultural routes. In addition to world-famous cigars, locals also farm rice, sweet potatoes, beans including coffee, corn and other crops and commodities. Heck, even honey, which was so delicious I wanted to straight up drink it. Okay, so I might have done that anyway, but it's fine. Oh, and another interesting fact? Apparently using mechanical methods to harvest tobacco lowers the quality of it, so time-tested methods, such as animal plows, are still used to this day to harvest the plant. Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. After soaking up the sun riding through the valley like Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, our ride was coming to an end. We were headed to what Junior described as the best place to get lunch in Viñales, so we hopped back in Grease Lightning and made our way there. I couldn't tell you how long it took us to get to the restaurant, and that's not a bad thing. Time seemed to stand still while we were traveling through the valley. Everything around us just moved if it wasn't even a concern anyway. I suppose island time is a real thing. At any rate, we got to the restaurant, which was very quaint and nestled just below one of the mogotes in the heart of the valley. Rich smells filled the air, and I was lucky enough to poke my head in the kitchen to catch a glimpse of the wonderful ladies who were cooking us lunch. It was a one-of-a-kind experience and place that continued the trend of the day so far. Speaking of trends, it was time for another drink.
You remember?
Con run? No question. Now, we eat.
So good, yeah.
What a delicious meal that was. If a nap were an option, I would have taken it. However, we had to continue our adventures through the valley, off to one of Viñales' most notable landmarks. Using the limestone monoliths as an additional guide, we slowly snaked our way through the valley, discovering something new at every turn. It started to become very clear the type of place Viñales was. It's a what you see is what you get type of place. There's nothing flashy here, there's no need for it. It stands as one of the most unique places in the world, and along with the people that live here, make this area truly special. Driving down the road, I just stared out the window and marveled at the beauty of the valley. This slow-paced lifestyle could be seen all around us. People going to and from, others plowing fields, working on crops, or taking a break on the front porch in a rocking chair smoking a cigar, waving as we drove by. Before I knew it, we were at our next spot, the Mural de la Prehistoria, a massive mural painted on the side of a mountain that depicts the evolution of Earth's history. Spanning from mollusks and other ancient sea organisms, this giant rock-faced painting moves to the age of dinosaurs and ends in the age of man. Once out of the car, I stretched my legs and wandered around, doing a little bit of my own exploring. Surrounded by mogotes and the lush scenery, I didn't talk much and just appreciated the moment. First of all, shout out to the guy who jumped out of the way a minute ago. It gave me a good laugh when it happened then, and it still does now. We spent a while at the Muro de la Prehistoria, exploring the grounds and drinking piña coladas, which, mind you, I can honestly say I've never had until my trip here to Cuba. I thought I wouldn't like them because of me hating coconut. It's not a taste, it's a texture thing, but I'm getting off topic here. What I'm trying to say is that they hit the spot and I'm on board with them. At this point, the day was starting to wind down. We hit the road and started our journey back to La Habana, driving through the valley one last time. I knew I wanted to do a day trip exploring the outside of the city while I was on this adventure, and I'm so glad I chose Viñales. The first time I even saw a picture of the valley, I knew this place was special. There's just nowhere else in the world quite like it. From the towering mogotes to the hard-working, welcoming locals, Viñales had been a one-of-a-kind day. Like the way here, we used the Sierra de los Órganos as a guide on the way back to La Habana. I came to Viñales with 6 strangers, and by the end of the day felt like I made a new family. It was one of the most authentic and unique days of my life. Speeding down the highway, windows rolled down, we spent the final hours together talking about what we were doing for the rest of a stay on the island. And before we knew it, the time came for us to say our goodbyes after a long 12-hour day. I made it back home myself, and after washing up, I ended the day the best way I knew how after visiting a tobacco farm. By smoking a cigar.